Welcome, dear friends, to a tranquil journey through 2 hours of Ben 10 lore, a universe filled with cosmic wonders, hidden secrets, and extraordinary adventures. Tonight, we'll explore the origins of Ben Tennyson, the incredible power of the Omnitrix, and the many heroes and villains that have shaped this timeless story. From Ben's first steps as an unlikely hero to his encounters with alien worlds, each part of this journey will softly guide you through the peaceful realms of his adventures, wrapping you in a sense of calm and quiet curiosity. The story of Ben Tennyson begins as most adventures do, with the unexpected. A young boy, full of mischief and energy, ready to explore the world, but unaware of the extraordinary journey that awaits him. Ben's life was typical for a boy of his age, spending his summer vacation with his grandpa Max and cousin Gwen. The world felt safe, predictable, and full of the small, everyday adventures that children hold dear. But everything changed one fateful summer when Ben stumbled upon a mysterious device, the Omnitrix. The Omnitrix, a powerful and enigmatic artifact, was unlike anything Ben had ever seen. It appeared as a simple wristwatch at first glance, but within it there existed the potential for unimaginable power. The Omnitrix had come into Ben's life quite by accident. It had fallen from the sky, landing near him in a forest while he was out exploring. Ben, always curious and eager for discovery, didn't hesitate to pick it up. As he strapped the device onto his wrist, little did he know that this single act would alter the course of his entire existence. With the Omnitrix in his possession, Ben gained the ability to transform into a variety of alien creatures, each with its own unique abilities. These transformations were powered by the watch, which was linked to the vast expanse of the universe, offering Ben a connection to countless alien species. At first, Ben's excitement was palpable. The notion of becoming different creatures, each with powers beyond his wildest dreams, was an allure he couldn't resist. He quickly discovered the first of the many alien forms available to him, the mighty Heat Blast. As Heat Blast, Ben gained the ability to manipulate fire, control the heat around him, and unleash bursts of flame that could melt nearly anything in his path. The world, which once seemed ordinary, was now full of possibilities. But it didn't take long for Ben to realize that his newfound power came with its own set of challenges. The world, after all, was not as safe as it seemed. A new and dangerous threat soon arrived on the scene. Vilgax, an intergalactic villain bent on obtaining the Omnitrix for himself. He knew that whoever controlled the Omnitrix would possess the power to conquer entire galaxies. The stakes were higher than Ben could have ever imagined. At first, Ben didn't understand the gravity of what he had unleashed. He was too young, too carefree, and too enamored with his ability to turn into aliens to consider the consequences. But Vilgax's pursuit of the Omnitrix soon became very real, and Ben found himself caught in the middle of a conflict far beyond his comprehension. As the days passed, Ben learned that he was not the only one connected to the Omnitrix. His grandpa Max, a former member of an elite group known as the Plumbers, knew far more than he let on. The Plumbers were an organization dedicated to protecting Earth from extraterrestrial threats, and Grandpa Max had spent years keeping the planet safe from the very kinds of dangers Ben now faced. With the arrival of Vilgax, Ben's adventures took on a much more serious tone. No longer could he simply play around with his newfound abilities. He had to grow up quickly, learning how to use the Omnitrix, not just for fun, but for survival. Gwen, Ben's cousin, also played a vital role in these early adventures. Though she didn't have the Omnitrix, Gwen was a force in her own right. She was highly intelligent and resourceful, with magical abilities that she had inherited from her father's side of the family. Together, the three of them, Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max, formed a team that would face some of the universe's most terrifying threats. As the story unfolded, Ben realized that the Omnitrix was not just a tool, it was a key to something much larger than himself. The device was tied to the fate of many worlds, many species, and countless adventures. Its origins were shrouded in mystery, and the more Ben learned about it, the more he understood how little he truly knew. In these early days of Ben's journey, the focus wasn't just on learning how to use the Omnitrix, but on learning responsibility. Ben's impulsive nature often led him to use the device recklessly, causing problems for himself and others. But with each new challenge, he learned the importance of patience, wisdom, and control. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Ben grew from a boy filled with excitement and curiosity into a hero who understood the weight of his responsibility. The Omnitrix was no longer just a toy, it was his weapon against the darkness that sought to engulf the universe. And so, the story of Ben 10 began with a young boy and a powerful device, both stepping into a world that would forever change them. The road ahead would be filled with alien creatures, dangerous foes, and untold adventures, but Ben was ready. The Omnitrix had chosen him, and it was now his duty to protect the Earth and its people from the cosmic dangers that lay ahead. Ben Tennyson's world was never meant to be as vast and complicated as it became the moment he found the Omnitrix. But in the summer of his adventure, there was something more important than just discovering his newfound powers. There were the people closest to him, his family, who would become his allies, his guides, and his anchors in the face of everything that was to come. Among these people were his cousin Gwen and his grandpa Max. These two were as much a part of his adventure as the Omnitrix itself, and it didn't take long for Ben to realize that their presence, skills, and wisdom were vital in helping him navigate this new world of aliens, danger, and responsibility. Gwen, Ben's cousin, was smart, resourceful, and quick thinking. Where Ben was impulsive and eager to jump headfirst into situations, Gwen was the voice of reason. Her intelligence was paired with a calm demeanor, always looking for solutions when things went wrong, something Ben's brashness often overlooked. Though Gwen didn't possess the Omnitrix, she was no stranger to the strange and the extraordinary. From an early age, she had inherited the mystical abilities of her father's side of the family, a legacy that allowed her to perform feats of magic that often proved useful in their travels. From creating protective shields to using her sharp intellect to outwit enemies, Gwen was a powerful force in her own right. Despite their differences, the bond between Ben and Gwen was unbreakable. They often bickered like most cousins would, but beneath the teasing and arguing was a deep, mutual respect. Gwen kept Ben grounded, reminding him of the importance of thinking before acting. And though Ben sometimes grew frustrated with Gwen's cautious approach, he knew deep down that her wisdom was something he could always rely on. Then there was Grandpa Max. Grandpa Max, or Max Tennyson, was no ordinary grandfather. Beneath his kind and gentle exterior was a man who had lived a life filled with adventure, danger, and secrets. A former member of an elite, intergalactic organization known as the Plumbers, Grandpa Max had seen his fair share of extraterrestrial threats, and he had spent his years protecting Earth from those dangers. Max's knowledge of the universe was vast, and his experience with alien species and technologies was invaluable to Ben. However, it wasn't just Grandpa Max's expertise that made him an important figure in Ben's journey. It was his ability to teach Ben the lessons of responsibility, honor, and self discipline. Where Ben's youthful enthusiasm might lead him into trouble, Max was there to guide him, showing him how to think strategically and always reminding him of the greater good. Though Ben often took the lead when it came to their adventures, he quickly realized that his success was not his alone. Gwen and Grandpa Max had a wealth of experience and wisdom that Ben needed to draw on. Together, they formed a team that, despite their differences, was united in their shared goal of protecting Earth from the various threats that lurked in the vastness of space. It was Grandpa Max who first explained the significance of the Omnitrix. For a long time, Ben had no real understanding of what it was or where it came from. All he knew was that it gave him the power to transform into aliens, and that was enough for him. But Max revealed to Ben the larger purpose of the device, how the Omnitrix was created as a tool to preserve and protect the galaxy's various species. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a key to understanding the interconnectedness of all life across the universe. But even as Ben grew in his understanding of the Omnitrix, the responsibilities that came with it weighed heavily on him. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was becoming a defender of the Earth, and soon he would be faced with choices that would test his character, his courage, and his resolve. The first major trial came when the villainous Vilgax arrived. Vilgax, a ruthless alien warlord, was determined to claim the Omnitrix for himself. His goal was simple. If he could control the Omnitrix, he would have the power to rule the universe. And so, he relentlessly pursued Ben, knowing that the young boy's connection to the Omnitrix made him a threat to Vilgax's ultimate goal. Ben's first encounter with Vilgax was a wake-up call. He was not just a kid with powers anymore. He was now the target of one of the universe's most dangerous beings. Vilgax's pursuits forced Ben to realize the true weight of his responsibility. It wasn't just about playing hero or using the Omnitrix for fun. It was about protecting the world and everything he loved. In the early stages of their adventures, Ben was often reckless and impulsive. He would rush into battles without thinking, relying on the power of his alien forms to get him out of trouble. While his alien transformations were undeniably powerful, they weren't always the solution. Ben needed to learn to control his powers and think before acting. Gwen, with her calm and strategic mind, often helped balance Ben's rashness. She would plan their moves carefully, helping them avoid traps and outsmart their enemies. Her magical abilities also gave them an edge, allowing her to create shields, control elements, and even manipulate the environment when necessary. Grandpa Max, too, was always there with his wisdom. He had faced countless challenges in his time with the Plumbers, and he was quick to offer guidance when Ben found himself overwhelmed. Whether it was reminding Ben of the importance of teamwork or teaching him how to use his powers responsibly, Max was the steady hand that helped steer Ben toward becoming a true hero. But it wasn't just the villains and the constant danger that Ben had to face. It was the inner conflict of growing up with the burden of such immense power. He wasn't just a kid playing games anymore. He was a young man who had to make choices that could impact the lives of those around him. And though his family was there to guide him, it was ultimately up to Ben to decide what kind of hero he would become. As the days passed, Ben's relationship with Gwen and Grandpa Max deepened. No longer was he the boy who ran off on his own adventures. He was part of a team, and together they were stronger than any threat they faced. Through their bond, Ben began to understand the true nature of heroism. It wasn't about the powers you wield or the alien forms you could transform into. It was about the heart, the choices you made, and the people who stood by your side. Ben learned that he couldn't do it alone, and the support of Gwen and Grandpa Max became as important as the Omnitrix itself. The discovery of the Omnitrix was the turning point in Ben Tennyson's life, one that would send ripples across the universe, forever altering the course of his destiny. What began as a seemingly innocent summer vacation quickly transformed into an adventure of intergalactic proportions, with Ben at the center of it all. He had unknowingly found a device that held the potential to change everything, an ancient, powerful relic known as the Omnitrix. At first, Ben had no idea what he had in his hands. When he discovered the strange device in the forest, it appeared to be nothing more than a piece of alien technology, a bizarre wristwatch that seemed out of place in his world. But as soon as he placed it on his wrist, the true nature of the Omnitrix was revealed, and his life was changed forever. The Omnitrix was not just a simple watch, it was a cosmic artifact created by a mysterious and ancient race known as the Galvans. This powerful device was designed as a means of preserving the diversity of life across the galaxy by allowing its wearer to transform into the different species it contained. Each alien transformation was more than just a new form. It was a unique set of abilities and traits that Ben could use to fight, protect, and survive in the face of the unknown. As Ben began to explore the Omnitrix's capabilities, the true weight of its power began to sink in. Each time he activated it, he could transform into one of a growing number of alien creatures, each one offering a different set of abilities that Ben could harness. Whether it was the fiery power of Heat Blast, the incredible strength of four arms, or the speed and agility of XLR-8, the Omnitrix provided Ben with the tools to face almost any challenge. But as he quickly learned, the Omnitrix was far more than just a means of power. It was a key to understanding the galaxy itself. What Ben did not yet know was that the Omnitrix was tied to an even greater purpose, a purpose that stretched across countless worlds, civilizations, and species. The Omnitrix was not just an artifact created by the Galvans for personal gain or experimentation. It was a device meant to preserve the biodiversity of the universe. It was a way to ensure that the many alien species of the galaxy could live on, protected and cherished, in a harmonious balance. The Omnitrix was a tool of protection meant to bridge the gap between species, to encourage unity and cooperation across vast distances. But in order to fully understand the gravity of the Omnitrix, Ben had to learn about its true origins and the ancient beings who had created it. He would soon discover that the Omnitrix was not just a gift, but a responsibility, a responsibility that would demand much more from him than he had ever imagined. It wasn't long before Ben encountered one of the greatest threats to the Omnitrix and the universe itself, Vilgax. Vilgax was an intergalactic warlord, a ruthless conqueror with a single minded obsession to control the Omnitrix and use its power to dominate the galaxy. Unlike Ben, who had stumbled upon the Omnitrix by accident, Vilgax was well aware of its potential. He knew that whoever controlled the Omnitrix would hold the key to unimaginable power, and for Vilgax, that power would be used for one purpose only: to conquer, control, and destroy. The first encounter between Ben and Vilgax was a stark reminder of how dangerous the Omnitrix truly was. Ben's impulsive nature, his eagerness to prove himself, led him into a direct confrontation with the alien warlord. He believed that his new powers would be enough to defeat Vilgax, but he soon learned that strength alone was not enough. In this battle, Ben came face to face with the true cost of wielding such immense power. It was not just about transforming into powerful aliens. It was about understanding the responsibility that came with the power of the Omnitrix. Ben's first lesson in the true power of the Omnitrix came when he realized that Vilgax was not an enemy that could be defeated through brute force alone. Vilgax had his own immense power, his own army, and his own understanding of the Omnitrix. Ben had to learn to think beyond his alien transformations and to use his mind, his family, and his allies to overcome the threat. Grandpa Max played a crucial role in this early confrontation, reminding Ben of the importance of strategy and teamwork. While Ben was busy using the Omnitrix to fight Vilgax, Grandpa Max was there to offer advice, help guide their escape, and teach Ben the value of staying calm in the face of danger. Gwen also proved to be an invaluable asset. With her magical abilities and her sharp intellect, she helped Ben think through his actions and come up with creative solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. Though Ben was often headstrong and impatient, it became clear that the Omnitrix could not be used in isolation. To truly understand its power, Ben had to rely on the wisdom and strength of those around him. It was not just his journey alone, it was a journey shared with his family, his team, and the many creatures of the universe who had come before him. The Omnitrix was a key to unlocking the stories of these beings, the forgotten histories of countless species that had been scattered across the cosmos. As Ben began to piece together the history of the Omnitrix, he realized that it was not just a tool of power, it was a reminder of the importance of unity and diversity. The Omnitrix brought together different species, different cultures, and different ways of thinking. It was a symbol of the strength that comes from embracing diversity, from recognizing the value in every creature, no matter how different they might seem. But this revelation also carried with it a heavy burden. Ben's role as the wielder of the Omnitrix was not just to protect Earth, but to protect the balance of the galaxy. He was part of a larger story, one that spanned across time, space, and countless worlds. And as he began to understand this, he knew that he was not just fighting for himself, but for the future of all life in the universe. The Omnitrix was not just a weapon, it was a legacy of the Galvans and their vision for a peaceful, diverse universe. And it was now in Ben's hands to carry that legacy forward, to protect it from those who would use it for evil, and to ensure that the stories of the universe's many species would live on. With this new understanding, Ben's journey as a hero took on a deeper meaning. It was no longer just about battling villains or defeating monsters. It was about embracing the responsibility of the Omnitrix and learning to use its power for good. As Ben continued to grow and mature, he would face many more challenges, some greater than others. But through it all, the Omnitrix would remain with him, a constant reminder of the vastness of the universe and the importance of unity, diversity, and responsibility. The Omnitrix, though powerful, was not just a means of power, it was a gateway to countless possibilities, a way to transform not only the world around Ben, but also the very fabric of his being. As Ben learned to harness the power of the Omnitrix, he discovered that it was not only about the alien forms he could transform into, but also about the choices he made in using those powers, the responsibility that came with each new form, and the personal growth that would come from understanding them all. At first, Ben's fascination with the Omnitrix was driven by the thrill of transformation. The idea of becoming a different creature, each with unique abilities, was exhilarating. The very first alien Ben became was Heat Blast, a being composed entirely of fire. The heat surged through him, and for a moment he felt invincible, like nothing could touch him. He reveled in the power, in the raw energy he could control, in the feeling of flames swirling around his body, as though he were the embodiment of a fiery storm. As Heat Blast, Ben had the ability to manipulate fire, to generate searing blasts of flame, and to control the heat in his surroundings. It was a spectacular power, and at first, it felt almost like a game. Ben could use Heat Blast's abilities to melt obstacles, defeat enemies, and break through barriers. But it didn't take long before Ben realized that this form wasn't just about destruction, it was about understanding the balance of power. While Heat Blast was a force to be reckoned with, Ben had to learn that fire, like all power, could be both helpful and harmful. With this, each new transformation, Ben would discover not just a new ability, but a new lesson in responsibility. After Heat Blast, Ben would transform into several other alien forms, each one unlocking new aspects of his personality and abilities. The next form he discovered was Four Arms, a towering, muscular alien with four powerful arms. With this new form, Ben gained the strength to lift massive objects, overpower enemies, and defend those who were in danger. But Four Arms was not just about raw physical power. The transformation challenged Ben to think beyond his impulses, to learn how to wield his strength with precision and care. Four Arms required patience and control, a reminder that strength without wisdom could quickly lead to recklessness. Then came XLR-8, a fast-moving alien with the ability to move at incredible speeds. With XLR-8, Ben could outrun almost anything, traveling faster than the speed of sound and leaving his enemies far behind. This form taught Ben the value of agility, quick thinking, and adaptability. It was a lesson in using speed not just to escape danger, but to act swiftly in times of need, to make choices that would prevent problems before they even began. With XLR-8, Ben learned to think on his feet, to use his surroundings to his advantage, and to remain focused in moments of urgency. But these transformations were just the beginning. As Ben's journey progressed, he encountered more complex and powerful forms. Each transformation revealed more about the Omnitrix's incredible capabilities, and each form brought with it a new set of challenges and responsibilities. Ben quickly realized that the Omnitrix wasn't just about choosing the strongest form, it was about choosing the right form for the right moment, understanding when to fight and when to use diplomacy, when to be powerful and when to be wise. One of the most significant transformations Ben would encounter was the powerful alien called Diamond Head. This form granted him the ability to manipulate crystal like structures, using sharp shards of diamond to attack or defend. Diamond Head was a formidable opponent, able to withstand powerful blows and strike back with devastating force. But it also taught Ben the value of resilience, the strength of being unyielding in the face of adversity. Diamond Head showed Ben that true strength wasn't just about physical power, it was about the ability to endure and remain steadfast in the face of challenges. Another important transformation was Ghost Freak, an alien with the ability to phase through solid objects and become intangible. Ghost Freak gave Ben the power of stealth, allowing him to move unseen, to slip through barriers, and to escape from dangerous situations undetected. But Ghost Freak also came with its own challenges. Ben quickly learned that this transformation, unlike others, was not under his full control. There was an eerie, unsettling quality to Ghost Freak, a darkness that seemed to seep into Ben's mind the longer he used it. It was a reminder that power, no matter how useful, could also be dangerous if not understood fully. As Ben continued to master the Omnitrix, he realized that each alien form was more than just a tool, it was a reflection of himself. The choices he made while in these forms would shape the kind of hero he would become. Every transformation was a lesson in balance, in understanding the power he wielded and the responsibility that came with it. But transformation wasn't always about power. Sometimes it was about understanding the strengths of others and learning to work together. For example, in moments where brute force wasn't the answer, Ben would turn to aliens like Upgrade, a technological creature who could merge with and enhance machines. With Upgrade, Ben could reprogram devices, transform technology into more efficient tools, and find solutions to problems that required more than just strength. It was a reminder that there were many ways to solve problems, and that not all challenges could be defeated with force alone. Similarly, the transformation into Wildvine, a plant based alien with the ability to manipulate vines and plant life, taught Ben about adaptability and the importance of nature. Wildvine was a form that connected Ben to the earth itself, reminding him of the importance of nurturing and growing rather than just conquering. Through Wildvine, Ben learned to see the beauty in nature and to understand the delicate balance that must be maintained to protect the world around him. As Ben's journey progressed, the Omnitrix continued to reveal new forms, each with its own unique abilities and lessons. The challenge for Ben, however, was not simply to master these forms, but to learn when and how to use them. His journey was as much about self-discovery as it was about heroism, and with each new transformation, he came one step closer to understanding the true nature of the Omnitrix and the hero he was destined to become. Yet despite all of his transformations, Ben learned that the true power of the Omnitrix wasn't in the aliens it gave him the ability to become. It was in his heart. The choices he made, the wisdom he gained, and the relationships he built with Gwen and Grandpa Max were what truly made him a hero. The Omnitrix was simply a tool, a way for him to channel his courage, his compassion, and his strength. The arrival of Vilgax was a pivotal moment in Ben Tennyson's journey. Though he had already begun to understand the immense power of the Omnitrix and had transformed into several different alien forms, he had not yet faced an enemy who could truly match the stakes of his newfound responsibilities. That was about to change as the ruthless warlord Vilgax emerged from the depths of space with a singular goal: to seize control of the Omnitrix and use its power to conquer the universe. Vilgax was no ordinary foe. He was an intergalactic conqueror, feared throughout the galaxy for his ruthlessness and ambition. His goal was simple: the Omnitrix was the key to ultimate power, and he would stop at nothing to obtain it. Ben, a young boy who had just stumbled upon the device, was now at the center of a cosmic battle that stretched across galaxies. He was no longer just an innocent bystander in an alien world. He was now the primary target of one of the universe's most dangerous villains. From the very first encounter, Ben realized that Vilgax was unlike any adversary he had faced before. The warlord was immensely powerful, commanding an army of ruthless soldiers and warships that threatened the entire planet. Unlike the monsters and threats Ben had previously encountered, Vilgax was a calculated, strategic mind, a villain who could not be defeated through sheer strength alone. His understanding of the Omnitrix, combined with his immense resources, made him a formidable adversary, and Ben quickly realized that this battle was not one he could win through reckless aggression alone. At first, Ben tried to rely on his alien transformations, using the various powers of the Omnitrix to confront Vilgax head-on. As Heat Blast, Four Arms, and XLR-8, Ben fought with all his might. But each time he faced Vilgax, he quickly learned that his alien forms were not enough to overcome the overwhelming force of the warlord. Vilgax's strength, intelligence, and sheer determination made him a nearly unstoppable force, and Ben realized that he would need more than just his alien abilities to defeat him. Vilgax was more than just a physical threat. He was a psychological one as well. The warlord understood the significance of the Omnitrix better than anyone, and he exploited Ben's inexperience and impulsive nature to his advantage. In their early encounters, Vilgax toyed with Ben, trying to break his spirit and make him doubt his ability to protect the Omnitrix. But what Vilgax failed to understand was that, while Ben was young and often reckless, he was also resilient. His determination to protect the Omnitrix and his loved ones, combined with the lessons he had learned from Grandpa Max and Gwen, kept him going, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The first major battle between Ben and Vilgax took place in the midst of a fierce storm. Vilgax had unleashed his forces on a remote island, hoping to draw Ben out and steal the Omnitrix once and for all. Ben, with the help of Grandpa Max and Gwen, made his way to the island, prepared to face the villain in what would be his first true test as a hero. As the battle raged on, Ben quickly realized that Vilgax's forces were too much for him to handle alone. Even with the power of the Omnitrix, Ben struggled to keep up with the sheer scale of the attack. It was a desperate situation, and Ben's impulsiveness almost led to disaster. In the heat of the moment, he rushed into battle, transforming into different aliens without considering the consequences. His attacks were powerful, but they lacked focus, and Vilgax's forces began to overwhelm him. It was at this moment that Grandpa Max stepped in, reminding Ben of the importance of strategy. Max had spent his life fighting against alien threats, and he knew that victory didn't always come through brute strength. He taught Ben that being a hero wasn't just about fighting, it was about understanding the enemy, using the environment to your advantage, and knowing when to fight and when to retreat. With Max's guidance, Ben began to regain control of the battle. He stopped relying solely on the Omnitrix's power and began to think more strategically. He used the environment to his advantage, setting traps for Vilgax's forces and making sure that each alien transformation served a specific purpose. Slowly, Ben began to turn the tide of the battle, and Vilgax, though powerful, began to see that his plans were being thwarted. However, even in the face of defeat, Vilgax was not one to back down easily. He was relentless, and after the first defeat, he retreated, only to return later with an even more dangerous plan. The warlord was willing to sacrifice anything, his soldiers, his ships, and even his own life to obtain the Omnitrix. For Vilgax, there was no other goal, no other purpose. He was obsessed with the power the Omnitrix promised, and he would stop at nothing to possess it. Over time, Ben's battles with Vilgax became more intense, with each encounter pushing him to his limits. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, Ben never gave up. He learned to work with his family, relying on the wisdom of Grandpa Max and the intelligence of Gwen to help him navigate the complexities of his new life. With each victory and each setback, Ben grew stronger, more capable, and more determined to protect the Omnitrix from falling into the wrong hands. But perhaps the most important lesson Ben learned from his encounters with Vilgax was this: being a hero was not about defeating your enemies with force alone. It was about having the strength to stand up, even when the world seemed against you. It was about making difficult choices, trusting those around you, and always doing what was right, even when it was the hardest path to follow. Vilgax may have been one of Ben's greatest enemies, but he was also one of the most important teachers in Ben's journey. Through his battles with the warlord, Ben learned the true meaning of heroism, that strength was not just about power, but about the courage to face adversity, the wisdom to know when to act, and the heart to fight for what was right. Ben Tennyson had always considered himself an ordinary kid, at least before discovering the Omnitrix. But as his summer adventures unfolded, he soon realized that his life was far from ordinary. The Omnitrix had transformed him into a hero, but there was so much more to the universe than what he had seen so far. Ben's world was now filled with alien encounters, dangerous threats, and unknown dangers that stretched beyond Earth. Yet amidst the chaos, there was one group that Ben would come to rely on time and time again: the Plumbers. The Plumbers were an elite, covert organization that worked behind the scenes to protect Earth from extraterrestrial threats. Founded decades earlier, they had been dedicated to keeping Earth safe from the many dangers that lurked in space. The organization had been tasked with monitoring alien activity on Earth, ensuring that extraterrestrial visitors and threats did not endanger humanity. They were a secret force, operating in the shadows, and only a select few were aware of their existence. But Ben's connection to the Plumbers went much deeper than just being a passive observer. His grandfather, Max Tennyson, had once been a member of this elite group, and it was his experience with the Plumbers that had shaped much of Ben's early understanding of the universe. For Max, The plumbers had been more than just an organization, they were a family. He had spent years working alongside them, battling alien invaders and ensuring that Earth remained safe from cosmic dangers. It was through Max's involvement with the plumbers that Ben began to understand the true scope of his own mission. As Ben continued to grow into his role as the bearer of the Omnitrix, the plumbers became an increasingly important part of his journey. They provided him with guidance, support, and knowledge that he could not have obtained on his own. The plumbers were not just a group of ordinary people, they were an interconnected web of specialists, each with their own expertise and abilities. From advanced technology experts to alien biology scientists, the plumbers were a diverse group, united by their mission to protect Earth. One of the first lessons Ben learned from the plumbers was the importance of teamwork. While Ben had grown accustomed to using the Omnitrix to tackle problems on his own, the plumbers taught him that no mission could be accomplished alone. The team based nature of the organization emphasized the value of collaboration. Ben began to realize that he could not always rely on the Omnitrix alone to solve problems. Sometimes, the best course of action was to work together with others, leveraging their skills and knowledge. As Ben's mentor, Grandpa Max was often the one to impart these lessons. Through their adventures, Max showed Ben how to think critically, plan ahead, and use his abilities strategically. Max's time with the plumbers had shaped his own approach to problem solving, and he was eager to pass that wisdom down to Ben. Under Max's guidance, Ben learned that the Omnitrix was not just a powerful weapon, it was a tool that needed to be used wisely, with thoughtfulness and care. The plumbers also introduced Ben to a whole new world of technology and knowledge. The organization had access to some of the most advanced alien technology in the universe, and they used it to monitor extraterrestrial activity and protect Earth from alien threats. From sophisticated spacecraft to powerful weapons, the plumbers had the tools they needed to confront any danger. Ben had never seen anything like it before. These weren't the gadgets of a superhero comic. They were real, tangible pieces of technology that Ben would use in his own battles. Through the plumbers, Ben also gained access to a wealth of information about the alien species he encountered. As the wielder of the Omnitrix, he could transform into a variety of different aliens, but the plumbers had the knowledge to help him understand these creatures better. Whether it was their biological makeup, their strengths, or their weaknesses, the plumber's extensive database provided Ben with the insights he needed to make informed decisions in battle. But as much as the plumbers helped Ben understand the alien world, they also taught him about the responsibilities of being a protector. The plumbers were not just a group of warriors, they were diplomats, scientists, and strategists. They worked tirelessly to ensure that Earth's safety was maintained, often making difficult decisions to prevent greater harm. Ben would soon realize that being a hero was not just about fighting the bad guys. It was about understanding the bigger picture, making the right choices, and considering the long-term consequences of his actions. Throughout his time with the plumbers, Ben also encountered a number of their agents, each with their own unique skills and personalities. Some, like the tech expert, were responsible for maintaining the organization's advanced gadgets and weaponry. Others, like the alien biology specialist, worked tirelessly to understand the alien creatures they encountered. There was also the ever resourceful plumber technician who could fix almost anything, from broken machinery to malfunctioning equipment, ensuring that the team could always rely on their tools when they needed them most. Ben's interactions with these individuals taught him the importance of knowledge, expertise, and collaboration. It wasn't just about fighting aliens, it was about understanding them, studying them, and finding ways to work together. In a universe so vast and diverse, Ben came to understand that there was much more to protecting Earth than simply defeating enemies. It was about fostering cooperation, respect, and understanding between species. While the plumbers provided Ben with essential support and knowledge, they also helped him see the importance of his own role. The Omnitrix was a powerful tool, but it was only one part of the larger puzzle. Ben's true strength came not from the device on his wrist, but from his heart. The courage to make difficult decisions, the wisdom to learn from his mistakes, and the compassion to protect those in need. As Ben continued his journey, the lessons he learned from the plumbers would shape him into the hero he was destined to become. The Omnitrix, the mysterious device that had become so much more than just a tool for Ben Tennyson, was not simply a gift or an accident. It was a legacy, a key to a vast and intricate story that spanned across the cosmos. From the moment Ben first discovered the Omnitrix, he had been thrust into a world far greater than his understanding, a world where the stakes were nothing short of universal. But as Ben grew into his role as the Omnitrix's wielder, he began to grasp the true significance of the device, a significance that went beyond the incredible powers it granted him. At its core, the Omnitrix was a symbol of balance, diversity, and preservation. Created by the ancient Galvans, the device was designed not as a weapon of war, but as a means of preserving the vast array of life forms scattered throughout the universe. The Omnitrix was an archive of the galaxy's species, containing the DNA of countless alien races, each with its own unique abilities and attributes. It was a tribute to the wonder of life itself, a living library of genetic information that sought to protect the richness and diversity of the cosmos. As Ben unlocked the power of the Omnitrix, he learned that it was not just a tool for transformation, it was a living, breathing part of the galaxy's ecosystem. The Omnitrix's true purpose was to preserve the balance of life, to ensure that the many species of the universe could coexist and flourish. This realization would be one of the most important lessons Ben would learn as he journeyed deeper into the mysteries of the Omnitrix and the legacy that lay behind it. What Ben didn't know when he first activated the Omnitrix was that it was also tied to the fate of countless worlds. The device had been created not just for its potential to transform its wearer, but for its ability to bring together the diversity of life in the universe. It was a reminder that all life, no matter how different, was part of a greater whole. Each alien species within the Omnitrix carried its own history, its own culture, and its own story. As Ben tapped into these transformations, he began to understand that his journey was not just about mastering the Omnitrix, it was about understanding the interconnectedness of all life. The more Ben used the Omnitrix, the more he realized that he was not simply fighting for Earth or for his own survival. He was fighting for the legacy of the Omnitrix itself. The device held within it the stories of countless civilizations, some lost, some forgotten, and some on the brink of extinction. The Omnitrix was a bridge, a connection to these worlds, and Ben had become its protector. With the power to transform into any one of these species, Ben was the guardian of the Omnitrix's legacy. As he continued to wield the Omnitrix, Ben began to encounter the true weight of its power. The more alien forms he unlocked, the more he realized that each one came with its own challenges. The powers of Heat Blast, Four Arms, XLR8, and the other aliens were formidable, but they were not without consequence. With each transformation, Ben had to confront the responsibility of wielding such immense power. The Omnitrix was not simply a gift, it was a responsibility. And as Ben's understanding of the device grew, so too did his understanding of the complex balance it represented. The Omnitrix's legacy was not just about its ability to preserve species, it was also about the preservation of the values that those species represented. Each alien form Ben transformed into carried with it the wisdom of its people, the lessons learned over countless generations. Whether it was the strength and resilience of Four Arms, the intelligence and adaptability of XLR8, or the peaceful nature of Wildvine, each form taught Ben something new about the universe and his place within it. One of the most important lessons Ben learned was the idea of unity through diversity. The Omnitrix was a device that brought together species from all corners of the universe, showing that even in the vastness of space, there was a place for every creature. It was a powerful reminder that strength came not from uniformity, but from the ability to understand and appreciate differences. Ben's role as the wielder of the Omnitrix was not just about mastering the power of transformation, it was about understanding the importance of coexistence, respect, and harmony among all living things. As Ben's connection to the Omnitrix deepened, he began to uncover more about its origins. The Omnitrix was not just a random creation, it was a part of a much larger plan. The device had been designed by the Galvans as a means of preserving the diversity of life in the universe, ensuring that the many species of the galaxy could live in balance and harmony. But the legacy of the Omnitrix was not just about preserving life, it was about the future of that life. The Omnitrix was a tool for progress, for evolution, and for the survival of the galaxy's species in a universe that was constantly changing. Ben's journey with the Omnitrix was not just about fighting villains or defeating monsters. It was about understanding the true meaning of legacy, the idea that the choices we make today can impact the generations that follow. The Omnitrix, as powerful as it was also a reminder that we are all connected, that the actions of one person can ripple out and affect the entire universe. For Ben, the legacy of the Omnitrix was not just about mastering its power, it was about ensuring that its lessons would live on for generations to come. Through the Omnitrix, Ben began to understand his place in the grand scheme of the universe. He was not just a boy with a powerful device on his wrist. He was a part of a larger story, a story that spanned across time and space. The Omnitrix had chosen him to be its protector, to carry its legacy forward, and to ensure that the diversity of life in the universe would be preserved for generations to come. It's dissing. Ben's understanding of the Omnitrix grew, so too did his understanding of the universe itself. He realized that the true power of the Omnitrix was not just in the transformations it granted him, but in the lessons it taught him about the importance of balance, diversity, and the interconnectedness of all life. And as he continued his journey, Ben knew that he was not just fighting for his own survival, but for the survival of the legacy that the Omnitrix represented. Ben Tennyson's journey from an impulsive, carefree kid to a hero of the galaxy was not a straight path. It was one full of challenges, mistakes, and important lessons. When Ben first discovered the Omnitrix, he was just a boy on summer vacation, eager for excitement and adventure. The idea of becoming different aliens was thrilling, and the power of transformation seemed like the perfect way to deal with any problem. However, it didn't take long for Ben to realize that being a hero was not as simple as it seemed. At first, Ben approached his newfound powers with a sense of invincibility. He was a kid with the ability to transform into aliens, each one more powerful than the last. He reveled in his strength, using it to take on villains and save the day. But as Ben's adventures continued, he began to realize that strength alone was not enough to be a true hero. Being a hero wasn't about the alien forms he could transform into. It was about the choices he made and the responsibility that came with those choices. As Ben faced more formidable enemies like Vilgax, and as the stakes of his adventures grew higher, he began to learn the true cost of being a hero. The Omnitrix was a powerful tool, but it was not without consequences. Every time Ben used its power, he had to consider not just the immediate outcome, but the long-term effects of his actions. Each battle he fought, each alien he became, required him to make difficult decisions. Was it the right time to fight? Should he use brute force or rely on his intelligence? These were questions that Ben had to answer as he grew into his role as a protector of the Earth. One of the most important lessons Ben learned was the importance of humility. Early on, Ben's youthful confidence and eagerness often led him to act without thinking. He was impulsive, quick to rush into battle, and often relied too heavily on the power of the Omnitrix to solve his problems. But as his enemies became more powerful, Ben realized that he couldn't always rely on his alien forms to win the day. He had to learn to think strategically, to trust his instincts, and to understand when to act and when to wait. This was where the wisdom of his family, especially Grandpa Max, played a crucial role. Max, with his years of experience as a former member of the Plumbers, taught Ben that being a hero wasn't just about fighting, it was about making the right choices. Max reminded Ben that true strength came from within, from having the courage to stand up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. The lessons Max imparted to Ben helped him develop into a more thoughtful and responsible hero, one who understood the value of patience, planning, and teamwork. In addition to Grandpa Max's wisdom, Ben also relied on his cousin Gwen for guidance. While Gwen didn't have the Omnitrix, her intelligence, magical abilities, and calm demeanor made her an invaluable ally. Gwen was always there to help Ben think through his actions, to provide a different perspective, and to offer solutions that Ben hadn't considered. Together, they formed a team, one that complemented each other's strengths and helped them overcome the challenges they faced. Gwen taught Ben the importance of working together, of listening to others, and of thinking before acting. As Ben continued to face greater threats and more complex challenges, he began to understand the true meaning of heroism. Being a hero was not about being the strongest or the most powerful. It was about making difficult decisions, taking responsibility for one's actions, and standing up for others. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves and using power not for personal gain, but for the greater good. Through his battles with Vilgax, the challenges he faced with the plumbers, and his many encounters with other villains and alien species, Ben learned the importance of sacrifice. To be a hero meant putting the needs of others above his own desires, whether that meant risking his life to save someone or making a difficult choice that could have long lasting consequences. Ben learned that heroism was not just about fighting evil, it was about making the world a better place, even if it meant making personal sacrifices along the way. Another aspect of Ben's growth was his understanding of the Omnitrix itself. Initially, he had seen the Omnitrix as a tool for power, a way to transform into different aliens and become invincible. But as Ben grew older and his adventures became more complex, he began to understand the deeper purpose of the device. The Omnitrix was not just about power, it was about balance. It was a tool designed to preserve life, to protect the diversity of species in the universe, and to maintain harmony between different worlds. Ben realized that his role as the Omnitrix's wielder was not just about using it for personal gain. It was about protecting the balance of the universe and ensuring that all life, no matter how different, had a place. As Ben continued to wield the Omnitrix, he also began to realize that being a hero wasn't about perfection. He made mistakes. He rushed into battles without thinking. He let his emotions get the best of him, and he occasionally relied too much on the power of the Omnitrix instead of his own abilities. But through each mistake, Ben learned and grew. He began to understand that being a hero wasn't about never failing. It was about learning from failure, getting back up, and continuing to fight for what was right. The evolution of Ben's character was a reflection of his journey, not just as a hero, but as a person. He had started out as a boy who sought adventure and excitement, but he had grown into a young man who understood the weight of responsibility and the sacrifices that came with being a hero. His journey was about more than just battling villains. It was about understanding the true meaning of power, humility, sacrifice, and compassion. As Ben's journey continued, he would face even greater challenges, deeper moral dilemmas, and more complex choices. But through it all, he would remain committed to the values he had learned along the way, to be strong, to be wise, and to always fight for what was right, no matter the cost. As Ben Tennyson's journey with the Omnitrix continued, he began to realize that his path was far from straightforward. Though he had already faced numerous battles, confronted powerful villains, and learned invaluable lessons, one question loomed over him. What would his future hold? The Omnitrix had opened the door to a universe of possibilities, but it also brought with it uncertainty and a weighty responsibility that Ben was only beginning to understand. His future was no longer just about saving the day or battling aliens. It was about understanding the broader implications of his role in the universe and the true cost of wielding the Omnitrix. The first hint that Ben's journey was far from over came in the form of future versions of himself. It started as a seemingly impossible encounter. A more mature Ben appeared, claiming to be from the future. This older version of Ben, known as Future Ben, was a glimpse into the potential future that awaited him. The encounter was not only shocking, but deeply unsettling. As future Ben revealed details about the future, it became clear that Ben's destiny was intricately tied to the Omnitrix, and the future held far more challenges and complications than he could have imagined. This encounter with future Ben left Ben with more questions than answers. Would he, too, grow into the mature, focused hero that his future self had become? Or would the road ahead lead him down a darker path? The future Ben saw was one of both triumph and loss. He had grown into a seasoned hero, but the Omnitrix's power had come with a heavy toll. Future Ben carried the burden of his decisions, facing the consequences of choices made in the heat of battle. For the first time, Ben realized that being a hero wasn't just about winning, it was about living with the choices you made and the lives you touched along the way. The idea that the Omnitrix could shape not only the present, but also the future, was a sobering revelation for Ben. He had spent so much time focused on the immediate threats he faced, defeating Vilgax, protecting the Earth, and mastering his alien transformations, that he had rarely thought about the long-term effects of wielding such immense power. The Omnitrix was not just a tool for fighting, it was a key to shaping the future of the universe itself. What would happen if he made the wrong choices? What if his actions led to unintended consequences that altered the course of history? For Ben, the future was now an open question. The Omnitrix granted him the ability to access the DNA of countless alien species, but it also tied him to a responsibility that he was still learning to fully grasp. Every time he used the Omnitrix, he was not just transforming into an alien, he was impacting the universe. The balance he worked so hard to protect was delicate, and each decision he made could shift the scales in unexpected ways. This knowledge weighed heavily on Ben as he faced greater threats and more complex dilemmas. But it wasn't just the future versions of himself that raised questions, it was also the deeper mysteries of the Omnitrix itself. As Ben continued to use the device, he uncovered more about its origins and the ancient beings who had created it. The Omnitrix had been designed as a means of preserving the diversity of life in the universe, but there were still many secrets hidden within it. Who had created the Omnitrix, and why? What purpose did it truly serve, and how was it connected to the larger cosmic balance? These questions gnawed at Ben, pushing him to uncover the truth behind the Omnitrix and the role he was destined to play in its legacy. The more Ben learned about the Omnitrix, the more he realized that it was not just a tool, it was a living, evolving entity with its own mysterious will. The Omnitrix's choice of him as its wielder was not an accident. It was part of a much larger plan. But what was that plan? And what did it mean for Ben's future? The device seemed to have a mind of its own, guiding Ben in ways he could not fully understand. The Omnitrix had chosen him for a reason, but that reason remained elusive, locked within the depths of its enigmatic design. Ben's journey became one of discovery, not just about his powers, but about the larger forces at work in the universe. As he faced new enemies and encountered strange new alien species, he began to see the Omnitrix not just as a weapon, but as a piece of a much larger puzzle. There were greater forces at play, and Ben was now a part of a cosmic web of destiny that stretched across time and space. The choices he made now would have far-reaching consequences, not just for Earth, but for the entire universe. Yet despite the uncertainty of the future, Ben's resolve remained strong. He had learned that being a hero wasn't about knowing everything or having all the answers. It was about making the best choices with the knowledge you had and being willing to face the consequences of those choices. Ben had grown from a carefree boy into a thoughtful young man, one who understood that being a hero meant accepting responsibility, both for the present and the future. The mystery of Ben's future was not something that could be solved in an instant. It was a journey that would unfold over time, with twists and turns that Ben could not yet predict. But the one thing Ben was certain of was that he would face whatever came next with courage and determination. The Omnitrix had chosen him for a reason, and as long as he had it, he would continue to protect the universe and preserve the legacy it represented. Ben's path was not just about saving the world, it was about understanding his place within the larger story of the universe and the role he was meant to play in its unfolding. The future was uncertain, but Ben knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the strength, wisdom, and heart of a true hero. And with every alien transformation, with every battle fought, and with every lesson learned, he was shaping not only his own future, but the future of the galaxy itself. Every hero, no matter how great, faces the moment when their courage is tested beyond anything they've ever known. For Ben Tennyson, that moment came with his confrontation against Vilgax, his greatest enemy. While Ben had already encountered many threats, Vilgax had always been the looming shadow, the villain who understood the power of the Omnitrix and was willing to stop at nothing to obtain it. With his relentless pursuit and vast resources, Vilgax had already proven that he was a dangerous foe. But the final battle between Ben and Vilgax would not just be a clash of strength, it would be a test of everything Ben had learned and become since first discovering the Omnitrix. The stakes had never been higher. Vilgax had returned with a new plan, one that would not only see him gain control of the Omnitrix, but also ensure that the universe would be reshaped according to his vision. For years, Vilgax had been searching for the Omnitrix, knowing that it was the key to ultimate power. Now that Ben had grown into a capable wielder of its abilities, Vilgax's pursuit had become all the more desperate. But this time, it was no longer just a simple battle for control. It was a battle for the fate of the universe itself. As Ben prepared for the ultimate confrontation, he found himself reflecting on how far he had come. In the early days of his journey, he had been reckless, impulsive, and unsure of his own power. He had wielded the Omnitrix like a toy, transforming into alien forms without fully understanding the responsibility it carried. But over time, and with the guidance of Grandpa Max and Gwen, Ben had learned the true weight of the Omnitrix. He had grown not just as a hero, but as a person, learning to make difficult choices, to balance his power with wisdom, and to understand the true cost of being a protector. The final battle against Vilgax would test everything Ben had learned and everything he had become. As Vilgax's forces advanced on Earth, Ben knew that there was no turning back. The battle would determine not only the fate of the Omnitrix, but also the future of the universe. Ben was no longer a kid with a powerful device. He was the guardian of the Omnitrix, the one person who could prevent Vilgax from achieving his goal. But even with all the power at his disposal, Ben knew that victory would not come easily. The first part of the battle was chaos. Vilgax's forces stormed through the city, attacking anything in their path. Ben transformed into various alien forms, using heat blasts as fire to clear obstacles, four arms' strength to fight off enemies, and XLR-8's speed to evade the overwhelming numbers. But no matter how many enemies he defeated, more seemed to take their place. Vilgax's army was relentless, and Ben quickly realized that brute force alone would not win this fight. He needed to think strategically, to use the full extent of his knowledge and experience. Throughout the battle, Ben's mind was constantly shifting between different alien forms, each one offering a different set of abilities. He used Wildvine to trap enemies in vines, Diamond Head to create defensive barriers, and Ghost Freak to phase through walls and escape danger. Each transformation was a reflection of the versatility that the Omnitrix offered, but Ben also knew that each form had its own limitations. The Omnitrix could only do so much. It was Ben who had to find the right balance between power and strategy. He had to think beyond his immediate needs and plan his moves carefully. As the battle raged on, Ben realized that Vilgax's strategy was far more complicated than he had initially thought. Vilgax wasn't just trying to overpower Ben, he was trying to break his spirit. He knew that the Omnitrix was a source of power, but it was also a source of immense responsibility. By attacking Ben's allies, by threatening those Ben loved, Vilgax was attempting to force Ben into a corner, into making a mistake, into losing control of the Omnitrix. But Ben refused to give in. He had learned from his past mistakes, and he understood now that being a hero wasn't just about defeating your enemies. It was about staying true to your values, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. The turning point in the battle came when Vilgax revealed his ultimate weapon, a device capable of draining the energy from the Omnitrix, rendering it useless. With the Omnitrix powerless, Ben would be nothing more than a regular kid. The threat of losing the Omnitrix, of losing his powers, was a fear that Ben had always pushed to the back of his mind. But now it was a reality. The battle had turned against him, and Vilgax was on the verge of winning. In that moment of desperation, Ben had to dig deep. He could not let fear dictate his actions. With the Omnitrix draining and his alien forms no longer accessible, Ben relied on something even more powerful, his heart. It wasn't the power of transformation that made Ben a hero. It was his determination to protect those he loved, his willingness to stand up against impossible odds, and his ability to inspire others to do the same. With the support of Gwen, Grandpa Max, and even the plumbers, Ben found the strength to continue fighting. He knew that victory wasn't just about fighting with strength, it was about fighting with purpose. In the final moments of the battle, Ben used his knowledge of the Omnitrix's inner workings to regain control of the device. He tapped into its power, unlocking a new level of transformation, the ultimate alien forms. These new transformations were the result of Ben's growth as a hero, the culmination of everything he had learned about responsibility, wisdom, and sacrifice. With the power of the ultimate aliens, Ben was able to defeat Vilgax, ending his reign of terror once and for all. The victory came at a high price. The battle had taken its toll on Ben, his allies, and the world around them. But through it all, Ben had proven that being a hero was not about being invincible. It was about being resilient. It was about facing your fears, overcoming your doubts, and standing up for what was right, even when the odds were against you. The Omnitrix had given Ben incredible power, but it was his heart, his courage, and his growth as a person that made him a true hero. The story of Ben Tennyson was never just his own. From the moment he first donned the Omnitrix, his fate became intricately linked with the universe. Through every battle, every alien transformation, and every lesson he learned, Ben was not only shaping his own future, he was shaping the future of countless others. His legacy was being written in real time, with every act of courage, every decision made in the heat of battle, and every sacrifice made in the name of protecting others. And as his story continued to unfold, Ben began to understand that the true impact of his journey went far beyond himself. He was part of something much greater, a cosmic tapestry that stretched across time and space. Ben's journey had begun innocently enough, a summer adventure with his grandpa Max and cousin Gwen. But as he discovered the Omnitrix and unlocked the power to transform into alien species, he quickly realized that his life was anything but ordinary. His role as the wielder of the Omnitrix carried immense responsibility, not just to Earth, but to the entire universe. As the battles grew larger, the stakes higher, Ben became more than just a hero. He became a symbol of hope, a protector of the innocent, and a force for good in a galaxy full of chaos. Throughout his journey, Ben faced countless challenges, from powerful villains like Vilgax to alien invaders and intergalactic threats. He was forced to make difficult choices, choices that tested his strength, his morality, and his resolve. In the face of danger, Ben learned to rely on the wisdom of his family, the strength of his allies, and the power of the Omnitrix. But above all, he learned that being a hero wasn't about the power you wield. It was about the heart you put into your actions. One of the most profound lessons Ben learned was that no hero could ever truly be alone. Although the Omnitrix gave him incredible power, it was his relationships with those around him that made him stronger. His bond with Gwen, who always kept him grounded with her intelligence and magic, and with Grandpa Max, who had spent his life fighting alien threats, was an anchor that kept him on course. The plumbers, too, played a crucial role in Ben's development, providing him with knowledge, resources, and guidance as he learned to wield the Omnitrix with greater responsibility. Through these relationships, Ben began to understand that his true strength lay not in his alien forms, but in his ability to work with others and trust them in times of need. But the legacy of Ben 10 was not just about the people who stood beside him. It was also about the world he sought to protect. From the very beginning, Ben had struggled with the idea that the Omnitrix was not just a gift, but a responsibility. He had used its power to fight off invaders and protect the innocent, but he had also faced the temptation to wield it for personal gain. As his understanding of the device deepened, so too did his understanding of its purpose. The Omnitrix was not just a weapon, it was a key to preserving the balance of life across the universe. It was a reminder that all species, no matter how different, had a role to play in the greater scheme of things. As Ben's adventures continued, he began to see the true impact of his actions. The battles he fought, the enemies he defeated, and the lives he saved had ripple effects that spread far beyond Earth. The Omnitrix had connected him to countless alien species, each with its own history, culture, and way of life. Ben had become a protector not just of Earth, but of the many worlds and species that depended on him. His journey was no longer just about defeating villains or protecting his home. It was about maintaining harmony across the galaxy and ensuring that life could continue to thrive. But Ben's legacy was not just about the victories he had achieved, it was about the lessons he had learned along the way. The Omnitrix had given him incredible power, but it was his heart, his compassion, and his willingness to put others before himself that had made him a true hero. Throughout his journey, Ben had been forced to confront his own weaknesses, his impatience, his impulsiveness, and his tendency to act before thinking. But with each challenge, he had grown. He had learned to be patient, to think strategically, and to trust in the wisdom of his allies. And with each lesson, he had become a better protector, a better hero, and a better person. Ben's legacy was also about the impact he had on those around him. His story inspired countless others to stand up for what was right, to fight for justice, and to never give up in the face of adversity. He had shown the universe that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. His courage and determination had sparked a fire in others, and his willingness to sacrifice for the greater good had set an example that would be remembered for generations to come. Whether it was Gwen, Grandpa Max, or the many allies he had made along the way, Ben had shown that the strength of a hero was not just in their power, but in their ability to inspire others to be better. As Ben continued to grow and evolve, his legacy would only become more profound. The battles may have been won, the villains defeated, but the lessons he had learned would live on. The Omnitrix would always be with him, a reminder of the responsibility he carried, but it was the heart that Ben had developed, the heart that was filled with courage, wisdom, and compassion that would define his true legacy. He was no longer just a boy with an alien device. He was a symbol of hope for the universe, a hero who had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person could make a difference. The legacy of Ben 10 would continue to shape the future, inspiring new generations of heroes to rise up and fight for what was right. But even as Ben moved forward, his story would always remain a reminder of the power of growth, the importance of friendship, and the true meaning of heroism. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Ben knew that his legacy would live on through the lives he touched, the battles he fought, and the hope he brought to the universe. Ben Tennyson's journey was always about more than just his role as the bearer of the Omnitrix. With each transformation, each alien form he took on, Ben discovered not only new powers and abilities, but also a deeper understanding of the universe and the many species that inhabited it. The Omnitrix, which at first seemed like nothing more than a tool for transformation, began to reveal itself as a symbol of the interconnectedness of life across the cosmos. The device held the DNA of countless alien species, each with its own unique history, culture, and way of life. As Ben unlocked new forms and faced new challenges, he began to realize that every alien species had its own role to play in the greater balance of the universe. Through his transformations, Ben came to understand that the Omnitrix was more than just a source of power. It was a bridge between worlds. Each alien he became was not just a weapon or a means to defeat enemies, but a living connection to the diversity and complexity of life across the galaxy. Whether it was the fire-wielding heat blast, the strength of 4 arms, or the speed of XLR-8, Each form Ben took on carried with it a history, a story that tied it to the greater web of life that spanned across space and time. This growing awareness of the interconnectedness of alien species was a defining moment in Ben's journey. In the early days, he had seen the Omnitrix as nothing more than a means to solve problems and defeat villains. But as he continued to wield its power, Ben began to understand that the true purpose of the Omnitrix was not just to give him power, but to remind him of the importance of balance and harmony. Every alien form he took on was not just a tool, it was a living, breathing part of the universe's intricate design. And with that power came responsibility, the responsibility to protect that balance, to ensure that the many species that called the galaxy home could coexist and thrive. Ben's growing understanding of the connections between aliens became even more apparent as he faced new challenges. The more alien species he encountered, the more he began to realize that each one was a part of a larger story. The Omnitrix had unlocked the DNA of these species for a reason. Each one was essential to the greater picture, contributing to the diversity and strength of the galaxy as a whole. Ben's role, as the wielder of the Omnitrix, was not just to protect Earth, it was to protect the delicate balance between all the species in the universe. One of the first times Ben truly understood the weight of this responsibility came when he encountered an alien species that was in danger of extinction. These creatures were peaceful, intelligent beings living on a distant planet, but they were being hunted by an outside force, a powerful intergalactic warlord who sought to wipe them out for their resources. Ben found himself in the difficult position of having to choose between saving the alien species and protecting Earth. It was a choice that required him to look beyond his own world, to see the bigger picture, and understand that the survival of one species often meant the survival of many others. As Ben worked alongside these aliens to stop the warlord, he began to realize that the fate of the universe was intertwined. If he allowed one species to be destroyed, the ripple effect would be felt across countless other worlds. The balance of life in the galaxy was fragile, and every action had consequences. This experience made Ben acutely aware that his role as a hero was not just about protecting his own planet, but about ensuring that all life in the universe was given the chance to thrive. He was no longer just a boy with a powerful device. He was a guardian of the galaxy's delicate equilibrium, tasked with maintaining harmony between species and protecting the very fabric of life. As Ben continued to wield the Omnitrix, his understanding of the interconnectedness of life deepened. He began to see that the aliens he transformed into were not just random creatures, they were part of a larger cosmic order. The Omnitrix, in its infinite wisdom, had chosen Ben as its wielder because he was capable of understanding this deeper truth. The aliens he became were not just tools in his fight against evil, they were reflections of the universe itself, each one embodying a different aspect of existence. Through the Omnitrix, Ben had been given the ability to experience this diversity firsthand, to understand the unique strengths and weaknesses of each species, and to see how they all played a role in the grand design of the universe. This awareness extended beyond the Omnitrix and the aliens it contained. As Ben continued his journey, he encountered other beings, some benevolent, some malevolent, that revealed just how interconnected the galaxy truly was. He met ancient beings who had existed long before the creation of the Omnitrix, powerful entities that existed outside of time and space. These beings, while vastly different from the aliens Ben transformed into, were still part of the same cosmic web. They too had a role to play in the balance of life, and their actions had shaped the course of history. Ben learned that the Omnitrix was not just a weapon, it was a tool for understanding the universe itself. The connections between aliens, the balance of life, and the relationships between different species were all part of a larger story that Ben was now a part of. As he grew in wisdom, Ben began to see that his actions, whether through the Omnitrix or through his own decisions, could either help to strengthen or destabilize the universe. His role as a hero was not just about defeating villains, it was about understanding the greater good and protecting the delicate harmony that existed between all living things. One of the most significant moments in Ben's journey came when he realized that he was not just the protector of Earth, but the protector of all life in the galaxy. The Omnitrix had chosen him not just because of his bravery, but because of his capacity for empathy, his ability to understand the value of all life, no matter how different. The aliens he transformed into, the worlds he visited, and the people he met all had stories of their own. And through the Omnitrix, Ben had the privilege of experiencing those stories, of understanding the richness and diversity of life in the universe. In the end, Ben's journey was not just about fighting villains and saving the day. It was about learning to see the bigger picture. It was about understanding that every species, every creature, and every world had a role to play in the greater balance of life. And as Ben continued his journey, he knew that the true power of the Omnitrix lay not in the transformations it offered, but in the wisdom it provided. Through the Omnitrix, Ben had learned that the universe was vast and full of wonder, and that every alien, every life form, was a part of the intricate tapestry that made up the cosmos. As Ben Tennyson's adventures continued, he found himself confronted with a question he hadn't fully considered at the beginning of his journey. What does it truly mean to be a hero? The excitement and thrill of wielding the Omnitrix and transforming into powerful aliens had once been enough for him. But as the battles became more complex and the stakes higher, Ben began to understand that being a hero was about much more than just having incredible powers or winning battles. It was about the choices he made, the way he treated others, and the legacy he would leave behind. When Ben first encountered the Omnitrix, it was a gateway to a world of adventure and excitement. At that time, he thought of heroism as something simple, a matter of defeating the villain and saving the day. Each time he transformed into a new alien, he felt the rush of power, and each victory gave him a sense of accomplishment. But the more he experienced, the more he realized that the true meaning of heroism was far deeper and more complex than he had ever imagined. Through the challenges he faced, Ben came to understand that being a hero wasn't about showing off power or being invincible. It was about making difficult decisions in the face of uncertainty, about being willing to make sacrifices, and about standing up for others, even when the odds were against you. Heroism was not about perfection. It was about striving to do what was right, even when you didn't have all the answers. Ben's journey had started with him being a young boy, with a sense of invincibility, someone who thought that the power of the Omnitrix would solve every problem. But as he grew older and faced greater challenges, Ben learned that being a hero wasn't just about the strength you had, it was about the heart you carried, the wisdom you gained, and the way you treated others. In his early days, Ben often made mistakes. He was impulsive, reckless, and sometimes even selfish. He used the Omnitrix to fight evil, but he also used it for fun, for personal gain, and for attention. He didn't fully understand the weight of the power he wielded or the consequences of his actions. It wasn't until he encountered more formidable enemies, like Vilgax and other cosmic threats, that Ben began to see the true cost of his heroism. Each battle took its toll, not just on him, but on the people around him. He realized that his actions had consequences, and that heroism required more than just defeating villains. It required wisdom, compassion, and selflessness. It meant putting others before yourself, even when it was difficult or uncomfortable. One of the most important lessons Ben learned came from his family. Grandpa Max, with his experience as a former member of the Plumbers, had seen firsthand the cost of heroism. Max had spent his life fighting against alien threats, protecting Earth from dangers beyond comprehension. But through it all, he had never lost sight of what it meant to be a true hero. It was about making tough choices, about understanding the bigger picture, and about acting with integrity. Max had always been there for Ben, not just as a mentor, but as a living example of what it meant to be a hero. Through Max's guidance, Ben learned the importance of thinking beyond himself and focusing on the greater good. Gwen, too, played a crucial role in Ben's understanding of heroism. While Ben had always relied on the power of the Omnitrix, Gwen's strength came from her intelligence, her magical abilities, and her wisdom. She was often the one to help Ben think through his actions, reminding him that being a hero wasn't about brute strength or flashy displays of power. It was about using your abilities to protect others and make the world a better place. Gwen's calm, thoughtful nature balanced Ben's impulsiveness, and together they made a great team. She taught him that being a hero wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking the right questions and always striving to do what was best for everyone. As Ben's understanding of heroism deepened, he also began to see that being a hero meant facing the truth about oneself. Throughout his journey, Ben had faced many battles against villains, against aliens, and even against his own doubts and insecurities. But the true test of his heroism came not from the physical challenges he faced, but from the emotional and moral dilemmas he encountered. What did it mean to be a hero when the world wasn't black and white? How could he make the right choices when the answers weren't clear? In the face of these questions, Ben came to realize that heroism was not about being perfect. It was about being human. He was a young boy, still learning, still growing, and still trying to figure out what it meant to be the protector of Earth. And along the way, he made mistakes. He wasn't always brave, and he didn't always make the right decisions. But the key to being a hero was to learn from those mistakes, to accept responsibility for them, and to keep moving forward even when things seemed impossible. One of Ben's greatest challenges came when he was forced to choose between saving the world and saving his loved ones. It was a choice that no hero should ever have to make, but it was a choice that Ben faced time and time again. He had to learn that being a hero wasn't about making the easy choices, it was about making the hard ones. Sometimes, doing the right thing meant sacrificing something valuable, whether it was his own safety, his personal desires, or even the love and support of those closest to him. Ben's journey was also about discovering that being a hero meant standing up for what was right, no matter how difficult it was. There were moments when Ben had to go against his own desires, when he had to put aside his ego and his pride to do what was necessary. It wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always clear, but Ben learned that true heroism was about having the courage to make those difficult choices. By the end of his journey, Ben had grown into a true hero. He was no longer just a boy with incredible powers. He was a young man who understood the weight of his responsibility and the sacrifices that came with it. Through his struggles, his triumphs, and his failures, Ben had learned that heroism was not just about the power you wield, but about the heart you put into your actions. And as he looked back on his journey, he realized that the true measure of his heroism was not in the battles he had fought, but in the person he had become. As Ben Tennyson continued to wield the Omnitrix, the challenges before him grew ever more formidable. With every new alien form he unlocked, with every new villain he encountered, the stakes became higher. He was no longer just a boy trying to navigate the world of intergalactic conflict. He had become the universe's protector, the one entrusted with the Omnitrix, a device of immense power that could change the very course of history. The final challenges that Ben faced weren't just physical battles or alien invasions. As his adventures had progressed, they had become a series of tests of his will, his values, and his growth as a hero. It wasn't enough to just have the power to fight. Ben had to understand how to wield that power responsibly. Each challenge he faced pushed him further along his path of growth, testing not only his abilities, but his understanding of what it meant to protect others. One of the most difficult lessons Ben learned in these final challenges was that heroism was often about sacrifice. As a young boy, he had been excited by the idea of being a hero, of using the Omnitrix to fight and save the day. But as he grew into his role, he began to realize that true heroism required more than just power. It required the ability to make hard choices, to put others before yourself, and sometimes to give up something you deeply cared about in order to do what was right. Ben had been forced to make these difficult choices before. He had made decisions that had cost him friendships, alliances, and personal desires. But the stakes were getting higher. Now, Ben was faced with situations where the choices he made would have far reaching consequences. Whether it was saving an entire planet from destruction or deciding to risk his own life to stop a new, more dangerous villain, Ben had to consider the long term effects of his actions. This sense of responsibility weighed heavily on Ben. He had learned that he was not just fighting for his own future, but for the future of countless other species, worlds, and civilizations. The Omnitrix had chosen him for a reason, because he was capable of handling such weighty decisions. But that didn't mean it was easy. In fact, at times it felt overwhelming. There were moments when Ben questioned whether he was truly up to the task, whether he could live up to the legacy of the Omnitrix and protect the galaxy from the threats that constantly loomed. But it was in these moments of doubt that Ben found his strength. He had the support of his family, of Gwen and Grandpa Max, who had been by his side throughout his journey. They had helped him grow and learn from his mistakes, and they had reminded him that even when things seemed impossible, he wasn't alone. Together, they were a team, and Ben knew that even when he faced the toughest challenges, he could rely on them to be there when it mattered most. These final challenges weren't just about defeating enemies, they were about testing Ben's ability to trust in the wisdom of those around him, to remain grounded even as the pressure of being the universe's protector grew. It was about learning that being a hero wasn't about being invincible. It was about being human, about understanding your limits and having the courage to push through them. Ben's greatest trial came when he had to face a new, more dangerous threat, the ultimate Vilgax. Having defeated the original Vilgax in earlier battles, Ben was not prepared for the return of this villain in an enhanced, more powerful form. Vilgax had learned from his previous defeats and had gone through drastic measures to enhance his strength and intelligence, turning himself into an even greater force of destruction. But this time, Ben would have to do more than just rely on the power of the Omnitrix. He would have to dig deep into his own inner strength and confront not just Vilgax, but his own fears and insecurities. The ultimate Vilgax represented the culmination of everything Ben had been fighting against. He was not only a physical adversary, but a symbol of everything Ben feared: failure, loss, and the overwhelming weight of responsibility. To defeat Vilgax this time, Ben would need to face not just the external threat, but the internal struggle that had been building throughout his journey. It was during this confrontation that Ben realized something vital. The true power of the Omnitrix did not come from the aliens it allowed him to transform into. It came from the person he had become. The lessons he had learned from Gwen, Grandpa Max, and even his mistakes had shaped him into a hero who could now face the darkest moments with a clear mind and a strong heart. In his final battle with Vilgax, Ben wasn't just using brute force or relying on the Omnitrix alone. He was drawing on everything he had learned about leadership, sacrifice, and trust. The fight was long and grueling, with Ben transforming into different alien forms to match Vilgax's monstrous new abilities. Heat Blast, 4 arms, XSLR-8. Ben cycled through his transformations, using every power at his disposal to counter Vilgax's attacks. But even as Ben fought with all his might, he understood that victory would not come through sheer power alone. The key to defeating Ultimate Vilgax lay in Ben's ability to outsmart his opponent and recognize the greater significance of their battle. Through clever strategy and determination, Ben eventually found a way to turn the tide in his favor. He used the environment around him, the lessons from past battles, and his knowledge of Vilgax's weaknesses to land the final blow. The battle was won, but the victory was bittersweet. Ben realized that the true cost of being a hero was not just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and psychological. Every victory required sacrifice, every choice had consequences, and every hero, no matter how strong, had to learn to accept the weight of their decisions. The ultimate challenge wasn't just about defeating Vilgax. It was about accepting the journey Ben had been on and understanding what it meant to truly be a hero. It was about realizing that strength didn't come from the Omnitrix. It came from within. And as Ben stood victorious, he knew that his journey wasn't over. He had grown, learned, and become stronger, but the universe was vast, and new challenges would always arise. But Ben was ready. He had faced his greatest fears, and now he was prepared to face whatever the future held with courage, wisdom, and heart. As the dust of battle settled and the final echoes of conflict faded away, Ben Tennyson found himself standing in the aftermath of his greatest challenges. The ultimate Vilgax had been defeated, and once again, Earth was safe from the forces that sought to destroy it. But in the quiet that followed, Ben couldn't help but reflect on everything he had gone through, the choices, the sacrifices, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Ben had come a long way from the reckless, impulsive boy who first discovered the Omnitrix. In the early days, he had seen the device as a tool for adventure, a means of transformation that allowed him to explore the universe in ways no one else could. The Omnitrix gave him power, and with that power came the thrill of being a hero. But over time, Ben had learned that being a hero was not about the power you wield. It was about the responsibility that came with it. The Omnitrix had become more than just a source of strength. It had become a symbol of the challenges he faced, the growth he experienced, and the legacy he was building. As Ben stood alone, looking out at the world he had fought so hard to protect, he understood that his journey wasn't just about him. It was about everyone he had met along the way, the people he had fought for, the friends who had stood by him, and the countless alien species that relied on him to preserve the balance of the universe. His role as the wielder of the Omnitrix was not just to defeat the villains who threatened Earth, but to maintain harmony across the galaxy. The universe was vast and complex, and Ben had become part of something much larger than he had ever imagined. One of the things that Ben had learned most profoundly was that heroism was not a one-time act. It wasn't about a single victory or a single choice. It was about a lifetime of decisions, of moments where you chose to stand up for others, to put the needs of the many above the desires of the few. Through his battles with Vilgax, the plumbers, and other alien threats, Ben had learned that being a hero wasn't about being invincible. It was about being vulnerable, about making mistakes and learning from them. It was about accepting the weight of your responsibilities and choosing to carry it for as long as it took. In the quiet aftermath of battle, Ben thought about the people who had helped him along the way. Grandpa Max had been his first mentor, teaching him not just how to use the Omnitrix, but how to think critically, how to protect those he loved, and how to understand the consequences of his actions. Max had shown Ben that being a hero wasn't just about fighting evil, it was about making the right choices, even when the answers weren't clear. Max had sacrificed much in his own life for the greater good, and Ben knew that it was because of him that he had learned the importance of selflessness. Then there was Gwen, his cousin, his partner, and his confidant. Gwen had always been the steadying force in Ben's life, the one who kept him grounded when his impulsiveness threatened to get the best of him. While Ben was the one who wielded the Omnitrix, Gwen was the one who helped him understand it, who reminded him that heroism wasn't just about strength, but about intelligence, strategy, and compassion. Without Gwen by his side, Ben knew he would have lost his way long ago. Their bond had been one of the driving forces behind his success, and it was clear to Ben that their teamwork was as vital to the mission as the Omnitrix itself. As Ben's thoughts drifted to his family, He realized that his role as a hero was not just about protecting Earth, it was about protecting the legacy of his loved ones and the values they had instilled in him. It was about ensuring that their sacrifices had meaning and that the lessons they had taught him would live on for generations to come. The more Ben reflected on his journey, the more he realized that he had been part of something much larger than himself. The Omnitrix, as powerful as it was not just a device, it was a part of the universe's intricate balance, a tool to preserve the diversity of life across galaxies. The responsibility Ben had carried was immense, and the challenges he had faced were not just his own, they were part of a much larger cosmic struggle. The galaxy was full of life, full of species, and full of stories that stretched across time. Ben had been chosen to protect that balance, and in doing so, he had become a link in an unbroken chain of heroes who had fought to ensure the survival of the universe. But despite the weight of these realizations, Ben also understood that the future was not something to be feared, it was something to be embraced. The challenges he had faced had been difficult, but they had helped him grow. He was no longer the boy who had stumbled upon the Omnitrix by accident. He was a young man who had proven himself to be worthy of its power. And as he looked toward the future, Ben knew that there would always be new challenges, new villains, and new adventures. But now he was ready for them. He was no longer just a wielder of the Omnitrix. He was a guardian of the universe, a hero who had learned the true meaning of strength, compassion, and responsibility. In the end, Ben's legacy wasn't just about the battles he won or the villains he defeated. It was about the lives he touched, the lessons he learned, and the person he had become. His story was one of growth, of transformation, not just through the Omnitrix, but through the choices he made, the wisdom he gained, and the way he learned to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And as Ben stood, looking out at the world he had fought so hard to protect, he knew that his journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Ben Tennyson had always thought of himself as a hero of Earth, a young boy gifted with the Omnitrix, tasked with protecting his home planet from the many dangers that lurked in the vast reaches of space. But as his journey unfolded, Ben began to realize that his role as a hero was far greater than just saving Earth. The universe was vast, filled with countless worlds, each one teeming with life, and his actions, his choices, would ripple out across galaxies, affecting not only the fate of Earth, but the future of many other worlds and species. With each new alien form Ben unlocked, he encountered new species, new cultures, and new civilizations that were all connected in some way to the cosmic web of life. His journey had shown him that the universe was far more interconnected than he had ever imagined. The Omnitrix was not just a tool for transformation, it was a key to understanding the deep, underlying harmony of the galaxy. Every alien species he became, every world he visited, was a part of the larger picture, a piece of the intricate puzzle that held the universe together. Ben had been given the power to transform into dozens of alien species, each with its own unique strengths, abilities, and history. From the fiery heat blast to the massive forearms, from the speedy XLR-8 to the flexible wildvine, each transformation had given Ben a new perspective on the universe. But over time, Ben began to see that his role was not just to wield the power of the Omnitrix, it was to preserve the balance of life in the galaxy. The Omnitrix had chosen him because it saw in him a potential to understand the bigger picture, to see the value in every species, and to protect the delicate harmony that existed between them. Through his many adventures, Ben encountered species that had once been at the brink of extinction, entire worlds that were under threat from powerful cosmic forces. The Omnitrix became not just a tool for battle, but a reminder of the fragile nature of life in the universe. Ben realized that every decision he made could have a far reaching effect, not just on Earth, but on every world and species that depended on him. The cosmic balance was delicate, and as its protector, Ben had a responsibility to ensure that that balance was maintained. The more Ben thought about his legacy, the more he understood that being a hero wasn't just about fighting villains and winning battles. It was about protecting life in all its forms, respecting the diversity of species and cultures, and ensuring that the interconnectedness of the universe remained intact. He had seen firsthand how one reckless decision, one moment of impulsivity, could cause ripples of destruction that affected not just his world, but countless others. Every time he used the Omnitrix, Ben wasn't just transforming into a powerful alien. He was taking on the responsibility of the universe itself, becoming part of a larger story that stretched across time and space. Ben's journey had shown him that the true measure of a hero was not in the victories they achieved, but in the lives they touched and the legacy they left behind. He wasn't just a hero for Earth, he was a hero for the universe. His choices, his actions, and his ability to work alongside others had become the cornerstone of his legacy. Ben knew that his role as the wielder of the Omnitrix was far from over, but he was no longer just a boy with a powerful device on his wrist. He was a part of something much greater, something far beyond himself. The Omnitrix had given Ben incredible power, but it had also shown him the importance of humility. As he continued to face challenges, Ben learned that true strength was not just about the power to defeat enemies, but about the wisdom to understand when to act, when to listen, and when to put others' needs before his own. The universe was vast, and Ben was only a small part of it, but his actions, his choices, and his understanding of the greater good would shape the universe in ways he had yet to fully comprehend. In the grand scheme of things, Ben understood that he was just one hero among many. The universe had always been full of protectors, heroes who had fought for justice and balance long before Ben discovered the Omnitrix. He had met many of them along the way, whether they were members of the Plumbers, intergalactic warriors, or ancient beings who had existed long before the Omnitrix was even created. These heroes had their own stories, their own battles, and their own legacies, and Ben was now a part of that long tradition of cosmic protectors. But what set Ben apart was his unique connection to the Omnitrix. The device had chosen him to carry its legacy forward, and with that responsibility came the power to shape the future. Ben had the ability to preserve life across galaxies, to protect worlds and species that were under threat, and to ensure that the harmony of the universe was maintained. Every transformation, every battle, and every choice he made was part of the legacy he would leave behind, a legacy of hope, courage, and balance. As Ben's journey continued, he realized that his legacy wasn't just about the battles he won or the enemies he defeated. It was about the relationships he built and the values he upheld. His bond with Gwen, Grandpa Max, and plumbers had taught him the importance of teamwork, empathy, and strategy. Together, they had faced some of the greatest threats the universe had ever seen, and together, they had ensured that the universe remained safe. But Ben also knew that he couldn't rely on others alone. He had to be the one to lead, to make the hard choices, and to carry the weight of the Omnitrix's power with wisdom and integrity. The more Ben thought about the universe and his place within it, the more he realized that his journey was never truly about himself. He had been given the Omnitrix not to become a hero for personal glory, but to protect the balance of life across the galaxy. His legacy would be defined not by the power he wielded, but by the lives he saved, the worlds he protected, and the harmony he preserved. The Omnitrix was a tool, yes, but it was also a symbol of the responsibility that came with great power and the potential to shape the future of the universe. Ben had learned that heroism wasn't about defeating villains or saving the world. It was about making choices that would ensure a better future for all. It was about understanding the interconnectedness of all life and using his power to protect that balance. And in doing so, Ben Tennyson had not only become a hero, he had become a protector of the universe, a guardian of the cosmic harmony that bound all life together. Ben Tennyson's journey as the wielder of the Omnitrix was one that spanned beyond the limits of time and space. Throughout his many adventures, he had faced enemies of incredible power, traveled to distant worlds, and encountered beings who were as ancient as the cosmos itself. Yet, despite the challenges he had overcome, Ben understood that his journey was far from finished. The Omnitrix had revealed to him the vastness of the universe and the many possibilities that lay ahead, but it had also shown him the fragility of life and the delicate balance that must be maintained to ensure the survival of all species. As Ben stood at the precipice of his future, he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. The universe was constantly changing, filled with new threats, new heroes, and new opportunities. But one thing was certain: Ben's role as a protector was not one that would end with the defeat of his greatest enemies or the completion of his current mission. It was a responsibility that would continue to evolve, and with that responsibility came a future that Ben could not fully predict, but one that he was ready to face with courage, wisdom, and the lessons he had learned along the way. The Omnitrix had chosen Ben for a reason. It had seen in him the potential to be more than just a hero. It had seen in him the capacity to protect the universe, to maintain the balance of life across countless worlds, and to inspire others to take up the mantle of heroism. Ben's journey was one of self-discovery, of learning what it meant to be truly strong, and of understanding that the power of the Omnitrix was not just in the transformations it allowed, but in the choices it required him to make. The future that awaited Ben would not be defined by the aliens he became or the enemies he fought, but by the legacy he chose to leave behind. As Ben had grown older, his understanding of heroism had matured. He had learned that being a hero was not just about saving the day, but about making difficult decisions in the face of uncertainty. It was about understanding that heroism required sacrifice and selflessness, and that sometimes the hardest battles were fought within rather than against an enemy. Ben had faced countless challenges, but each one had taught him a valuable lesson. The Omnitrix had been a tool, but the true source of his strength came from within: his heart, his ability to empathize with others, and his unwavering resolve to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The universe was vast, and Ben understood that the challenges he had faced were just the beginning. As the wielder of the Omnitrix, he had become a part of something much larger than himself. The Omnitrix had given him the power to protect worlds, to bridge the gap between alien species, and to ensure the survival of countless civilizations. But the future of the Omnitrix and the future of the universe itself was in constant flux. New threats would always arise, and Ben's role as a hero would continue to evolve. Ben's future wasn't just about what he could accomplish on his own, it was about how he could inspire others to join him in the fight for justice and peace. His journey had shown him that a hero's strength came not just from their abilities, but from the people they worked alongside, the relationships they formed, and the trust they built. The future of Ben 10 would not be shaped by Ben alone, but by the collective efforts of heroes who fought for the greater good. The plumbers, Gwen, Grandpa Max, and countless other allies had all played crucial roles in Ben's journey. Each of them had contributed something vital to his growth, not just in battle, but in their shared wisdom and perspective. As Ben looked toward the future, he knew that he would continue to rely on the support and strength of those who stood beside him. Together, they had formed an unbreakable bond, one that transcended the boundaries of time and space. And as Ben's journey continued, he would continue to draw on that unity, knowing that true heroism was never about individual glory. It was about the collective strength of those who came together for a common cause. Ben's legacy was not just about the victories he had won, it was about the lives he had touched, the lessons he had learned, and the example he had set for others to follow. His journey had shown the universe that anyone, no matter how young or inexperienced, could rise to the challenge and make a difference. The Omnitrix had chosen him for his courage, his heart, and his ability to understand the complexities of life. But the true test of his legacy would come in the future, when new challenges arose, and Ben would have to call on all that he had learned to protect the universe once again. As the wielder of the Omnitrix, Ben understood that his journey was not just about facing the villains who threatened Earth or the galaxy. It was about maintaining the balance of life, protecting the diversity of species, and ensuring that every world had the opportunity to thrive. The Omnitrix had given him the power to transform into countless aliens, each one with its own strengths and weaknesses. But the true power of the Omnitrix was in Ben's ability to understand the greater good, to see beyond his own desires and fight for the survival of the universe. The future of Ben 10 was filled with limitless possibilities. There would be new aliens to discover, new worlds to explore, and new challenges to face. But through it all, Ben knew that his journey had just begun. The legacy he had built would continue to inspire others, and his role as the protector of the universe would endure for as long as the stars shone in the sky. Ben's future would not be defined by the battles he fought or the victories he won. It would be defined by the strength of his heart, the wisdom he had gained, and the legacy he left behind. The Omnitrix had chosen him to protect the universe, and Ben would continue to do so with the same courage, determination, and sense of purpose that had guided him from the beginning. And so, as Ben looked out at the horizon, He knew that whatever challenges the future held, he would face them with an unwavering spirit, knowing that his legacy as a hero would live on, not just in the galaxy, but in the hearts of those who had been inspired by his journey. As the journey comes to a close, so does the story of Ben Tennyson's legacy, one built on courage, sacrifice, and the unwavering pursuit of what is right. Ben's path, though filled with great challenges, has illuminated the way for countless others to find their own strength and become heroes in their own right. His story serves as a reminder that the true essence of heroism is not defined by power, but by the choices we make, the bonds we form, and the hearts we touch along the way. Thank you for joining Ben on this incredible journey, for walking with him through his moments of doubt, his victories, and his growth into the hero he was always meant to be. May his legacy inspire you as it continues to inspire the universe around him. As the stars shine brightly above, may you find peace, knowing that the stories of heroes, great and small, never truly end. They live on in the hearts of those who believe, in the worlds they protect, and in the hope they carry forward. Good night, and may your dreams be as vast as the universe Ben has sworn to protect.